Greetings, thank you for joining me today. My customer service here with another book review. Now today we're reviewing Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Now my copy of the book came with a foreword by Margaret Atwood of Handmaid's Tale fame, and also David Bradshaw. It's quite a bit of text ahead of the text, which I happily skipped because, and there's also a foreword by the author himself. There are any text when you read it, any book when you read it, will have some errors. And in hindsight's 2020, but if you're an author, you have to press go at some point and say, look, the text is finished, I'm going to let it go. And that's usually when you're 30,000 prints in and it started to hit the shelves. That's when you notice the glaring errors in page 23. It's all saying things like that you notice. Yeah, but even the author says, well, you can't go back and change it. It is what it is. Yes, sure, hindsight would have us write it slightly differently, but where do you stop? A book is not necessarily a perfect thing. It's just a thing to make you feel. It's just a thing to tell a story in a certain way, maybe sometimes clumsy, but it makes you feel it, and it makes you think. And Brave New World does both those things. It makes you feel and it makes you think. Now, in a lot of parts of the world, parents would have a school ban a certain book because it has challenging notions, or it might give rise to emotions in their child. I mean, the child's not allowed to read it, because it might challenge their expectations. No, I mean, books are created, to put a story out there, to put a certain notion or several notions out there, but unless somebody truly believes, unless somebody comes to the conclusions themselves, you're not going to change in your hearts and minds. When it comes to a dystopian story like this, it's just, in this case, Huxley's view of what could happen if governments become too controlling. That's what it boils down to. If we strive towards greater automation, this is what can happen. If we end up with a sterile world, free of disease but also free of choice, then this is what can happen. So the world is slightly different in this telling of the future. You focusing on one individual and his friends as they go through life. The future in this book is where everything is very sterile. People no longer reproduce. People no longer reproduce in the traditional way. Mum and dad and nothing traditional like that. Sex is just a recreation, and people are grown in test tubes in factories and imbued with certain qualities and cloned, and clones are created at certain levels of intelligence for certain sort of roles in life. They haven't yet found a way to eliminate people of a certain level of intelligence or anything like that. The people are created and given roles, and even though automation could phase out the work of the lower intelligence castes, they're still there, they're still allowed to be, and everything works because everyone has a place and everyone is happy because they're conditioned to be happy, and above and beyond their conditioning they're given a common drug, soma, which is supposed to be without side effects, but people have it in increasing doses depending on how much trauma they've been through. And you can see how the structure of the society is based around a lot of control. And in this vision of the future, people aren't allowed to read old text, they're not allowed to think outside of the box that they were created to fill, and so the government is in complete control, and the government is so it would seem a global government, and no one is free to think, no one is free to be, except for the people who live in the reservation, where people are free within the reservation, but not free to leave the reservation. They're free to practice the old ways, the old religions, live like paupers in the mud there, but at least they've got their culture, the old ways, the old texts, and they live there. So the story's in two halves. It has, the first half is about the people who live in the dystopian future, the Brave New World, where they worship Henry Ford and his vision of automation, and everything's clean and sterile, and choice is cut out of the equation for people, and the counterpart to that is the second part of the book, where they go and visit a guy who lives and his mum, who lives in the old world, the reservation, where things are equally awful but in a different way, because poverty and disease are rife there, and people are allowed to age at a normal rate. In the Brave New World, people are pumped with drugs and hormones to keep them looking young right up until they're in their 60s, and then they're just allowed to die, and which is a dystopian thought in itself, isn't it? And whereas in the reservation, they're just allowed to die. Yeah. So it's a vision of what can happen if government takes too much control, and it's a vision that still holds true today. It's something to be aware of, be wary of, because if you allow the government to take far too much control, then yeah, that sort of thing can happen. We may stamp out disease, but how do we go about that? We may create a world where people are happy, but how do you create that world where people are happy, and what sacrifices are made in order to achieve that? It makes you think about all these things. Great book. I enjoyed reading it on the tram every day on the way to work and back again. And it's a good book because it draws you in. I was able to focus on it, even though there was an awful lot of noise and kerfuffle going on around me. With people who are inconsiderate and listen to their mobile phones and watch endless TikToks at high volume, often on repeat. Normally irritating to the point where I might want to resort to violence, but I was able to focus on the book, so it tells you a lot about the quality of the writing here. Now, Huxley says, well, there are gaping flaws, and sure, any author would tell you, yes, in hindsight, you can see flaws in the text that's been created, but where do you stop? Where do you stop? Is it better to just press go on a text which works, which tells a story, which gives a rise of emotion, which makes you think, and to hell with it, there'll be errors. There always will be errors. It's human. Would you change it? No, not at all. The characters within the story, some of them are a tad misogynistic with modern eyes. But you've got to remember when this was written. And if you were to be reading it out in class, for a moment you might be a little embarrassed with the notions embraced by some of the characters. But then, there are still today plenty of misogynistic people out there, plenty of people who are awfully superficial, and all of these characters are within the book. It's not a bad thing, it's just a telling of these people and their view of life. The missus would say that, yes, the book is still fine. It's okay for the people in this book to have the views they have, because that's what makes them the characters in the book. It's not to say it's acceptable to have it in modern society, acceptable to have these views. It is just to say within this society, in the story, it's just fine. So yeah, I enjoyed it. If you get a chance, well worth a read. If you haven't, you're missing out. Now, if you have read the book already and you've got thoughts on it, do let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And yes, I think that's all for now. But whatever you do, have a great day. See you soon, and bye for now. Happy reading.